right, seventh graders, we are picking up our discussion about renewable and non-renewable resources. So you will remember last time we were talking about the pros and cons, and we had finished up by talking about the pros and cons of fossil fuels like coal, natural gas, and petroleum. Pros being they're more reliable, they're relatively cheap, and the cons being, first of all, that they're non-renewable. So refresh, renewable versus a non-renewable resource. Renewable means that the earth can produce it or reproduce it at a faster rate than humans are able to utilize it. And then the non-renewable, those were the things that humans were using faster than earth is able to produce it. So we said those were the things like coal, natural gas, and petroleum. So in addition to the non-renewable being a con, we said that those fossil fuels were pretty dirty. They create lots of carbon emissions and pollution, and they can also be harmful to wildlife and landscapes. So now let's talk about the renewable resources. So sunlight, which we utilize for solar energy, is a renewable resource because the earth is able to produce sunlight faster than humans are able to use it. We're not worried about running out of sunlight. So the pros are that sunlight is renewable. We're not going to run out of sunlight. It's also free. The sunlight is free, not the solar energy part, but the sunlight is free and it's very clean. So compared to our fossil fuels, which create a lot of carbon emissions that go into our atmosphere, and they create things like smog and acid rain, sunlight and solar energy is very clean to produce. The cons are that, well, first of all, sunlight doesn't fall evenly over our entire Earth. So, for example, even in the U.S., there are parts of Alaska that, depending on the year, may only get, a half an hour to up to maybe 3 hours of sunlight a day in the wintertime. So it would not be a great idea to depend solely on solar energy if you live somewhere like Alaska. They don't get sunlight every day. Another con is that the technology that turns sunlight into a usable energy is very expensive. So the sunlight is free, but the sunlight is not what's going to power your car or warm your home all on its own. Well, that was silly. Sunlight does warm your home, but you know what I mean. The solar energy that you need to, say, turn your lights on in your bedroom. The technology to convert that sunlight into solar energy is very expensive. But you see it more and more. In the last, I would say 10 years, I see it all the time anymore. I see it on the sides of houses. You might see like big fields. Like I know there's a big field off of Highway 69 where there's just tons of solar panels. Or in Evansville, I know there's a little spot by Plaza Park Middle School that just has a huge solar panel field. So you see them more and more. Oh, and there's one by the Boonville water treatment where there's just these fields, this area dedicated to solar panels, and they're just collecting that sunlight and turning it into solar energy. All right, our next renewable resource is wind, which we turn into wind energy. So the pros are very similar to our sunlight. It's renewable. We're not worried about running out of wind. It's also free and clean. It's not creating the carbon emissions or the dirty exhaust that, like, say, a fossil fuel would. And the wind is free. But just like the solar energy, the wind is free, but the technology to turn it into a usable energy is not. So the cons is that, similar to our sunlight, not all areas of the earth are windy. We have some of these big wind turbines around here, but if you go to other areas of the U.S., like on the way to Chicago, I know there's a huge field with tons of wind turbines. Because, Chicago is not called the Windy City for nothing, right? They have lots of more wind than we do. If you go out west to the plains area of the U.S., because it is just this flat, open area, they have way more wind than even just somewhere around like Boonville because they don't have things like woods or mountains or anything like that. It's just wind whipping through. So they have tons of these wind turbine fields. The cons are also that they can be very noisy. If you've seen those wind turbines, they're huge. Okay, think about the noise that just like a box fan produces and then magnify that times like maybe 1,000. Those wind turbines are huge, so they do create a lot of noise. That's why you tend to see those wind turbines in like big open fields as opposed to, say, like in someone's backyard. And then the other con is that they can threaten wildlife. Obviously, if a bird were to fly at that wind turbine, it's not going to turn out so well for that bird. So that tends to be a con for the wind energy. These are the wind turbines that I'm talking about, these huge blades that you might see. There are some around our area, but you'll notice them a lot more if you travel out of the area, like I said, up north towards Chicago, things like that. So those are our renewable resources. They're things that the earth is able to produce faster than we are able to use them.